Hello and welcome, everybody. Good morning. I'm the Reverend William Levwood. I'm the minister here at Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. My pronouns are he and him. We open and welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land who live on in their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomic Indian Tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all together shall one day know full justice. All right. Let us pledge together as we light our chalice with these words from our mission statement. Together we pledge to care in community. Together we pledge to grow in spirit. Together we pledge to act for justice.
Good morning and welcome to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Sheila Doles, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm happy to be your worship associate today. I hope you got a name tag or put your name on your Zoom name tag, and if you need help with that on Zoom, let us know in the chat. If you aren't new to Accotink, look around. Do you see people you haven't met or haven't spoken to in a while? These people like you and want to meet you. Help us live up to our mission to be a welcoming and inclusive spiritual home for all by reaching out and making a connection. By visiting this congregation, newcomers are in a transition moment, and people in transitions are more open to new friendships. That means that your new best friend might be here this morning, and this is your chance to get to them before somebody else does. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we encourage you to stay for our social hour online and in person immediately after service. We're so delighted that you decided to join us today. Welcome.
So I mentioned already that an idol is a statue because of the frozenness, because it doesn't move. But I think that's pretty limiting and not very useful. What's more useful is an idol as a concept, right? That anything that we are rigid about, anytime that we think that this is the answer and the only answer, this is the energy that is called for in every moment and it's going to solve everything, that's an idol. And it's for that reason that in the monotheistic traditions you have stories, like you do in the Jewish and Muslim traditions, you have the same story in both traditions, that Abraham's father was an idol maker. And that one day he went off probably to the market to sell some idols, and Abraham was there in the workshop, and he smashed all the idols. Destroyed them all. And when his father came back, he was furious. And he said, I can't believe that you smashed all these idols. And Abraham said, oh, I didn't smash any idols. There was one statue remaining, the biggest statue. He said, that's who did it. The big God, the big idol. His point was that the idols actually were dead, right? They were frozen, that they had actually no power. And so it was silly to worship them. Now again, on the face of it as actual statues, there's nothing wrong, I don't think, of making a statue. And we'll talk about how it can actually be an icon rather than an idol. But any time that we freeze something and get rigid, that becomes an idol, and that is a dangerous thing. Now, I'm not sure that monotheism really cracked the code on that. In fact, in our starting points this past Thursday, in our curriculum for newcomers and new members, we talked about the fact that in many ways, for many of us, what monotheism, some of the traditions have done is have that big idol become God. But it's really an idol, right? It's really a rigid, dead, frozen thing. And some of us are atheists in a deeper, more considered way, but some of us are atheists about that idol, right? Because we actually are being good monotheists, right? In a sense, right? And how much more dangerous it is to have one idol. At least with polytheistic idols, you had multiple energies, right? That you could switch from. But now you've got just one monotheistic, monoculture, fascist leaning kind of energy, potentially, if it's an idol. So it doesn't have to be an idol, though. So let's talk about icons. So once again, if we think of an icon, there's the literal icons like you find in the Eastern Orthodox tradition. They're flat, two-dimensional paintings of saints that are used for spiritual practice to connect people to certain energies that the saint lived in their life. And it's interesting to me that they actually have less dimensionality, right? They're two-dimensional. These statues are actually three-dimensional, right? But I think that there's something really beautiful about that because it's as if it says this couldn't possibly be it. This is just pointing towards it, especially because they're based on saints, right? Which is actual people who lived and did things. And I think, for me, an icon is a window or a doorway. So if you think of that, a painting, right? It mimics that window or doorway that leads us into that energy that we can meditate on and then that we can hopefully, through practice, embody in our own lives. So again, it's not really, even though I said I like that windowness of a painting, I just showed you that by moving these statues, they can become icons, right? They can become alive and evocative and take us into the world and into interaction. They're not frozen. They're ever changing. Now, I want to say that it also can be quite simple. What is an icon? In fact, I brought my 5 smooth stones. Anybody remember when we talked about the 5 smooth stones from UU theologian JLA, James Luther Adams? So it can be a stone, right? I have a stone for justice. I have a stone for possibility. I have a stone to remind me of hope. I have a stone to remind me of power and of partnership. So those can be icons as well. Or we've also worked with the 4 pebbles that Thich Nhat Hanh uses, the 4 pebble meditation, where one pebble stands for a flower. You breathe in flower, you breathe out freshness, presentness in the moment, or you breathe in mountain, and you breathe out that stability. You breathe in clear water. You breathe out reflecting the world as it is. So we can use those icons in our lives. Let me give an example with Thich Nhat Hanh. So if I'm parenting, right, and my child is having a tantrum, they might need me to be that stable mountain that says, through my body, through my soothing tone of voice, I got you. I know you're losing control right now. I know you feel awful, but I've got the stability here to hold the space for you. But that might not be enough, right? I've been in moments as a chaplain where, like, just to be stable while someone is facing a huge tragedy is kind of disrespectful, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'm good. You want that stability underneath, But then you have to match them where they're at. So you have to bring in that clear, reflecting water of empathy and connection, right? So that could happen in the parenting thing too. Oh, I see, how you feeling? You're angry, you're scared, you're sad, whatever it is, mixture of all of those, right? So we can use these icons in our lives to touch in and to dance them, so to speak, in our interactions as a responsive, right? Do you see the difference between an idol and icon when we start to look at it this way? How the icon can be an entryway into responsive, empathic, connected, loving action. Isn't that beautiful? So, before we go a little deeper into exploring that, I just want to point out that, and I think I've said this already, but really underscore, it's how we relate to the image or the words. An icon could be a poem or a phrase, but it's how we relate to it that makes it an idol or makes it an icon. So for example, this sculpture here was like this, I told you it was like inspired by a tank. And had this whole image of like the military industrial colonialist complex coming to conquer. And it was bad, and even it didn't have a head, like it couldn't think. But my teacher really loved this piece. And I really loved those thick thighs, and I was like, huh. I mean, as an energy, there's nothing bad about this. This could also be the energy of resistance to the military industrial colonialist thing, right? This big, huge hand of greed could be lust for life in a good sense, right? So like I was tempted to turn this into an idol, right? Even a living idol with those energies, but to like close in and say, oh, it's always bad. But it's not always bad. And these more prosaic images are not always good. They're not always the right medicine. Another example of how you can turn anything into an idol, I want you to look back at this wonderful quilt that Peggy Eckerman made that is also on our website. I love this image. And for me, it's an icon of how we connect as a community, right? How we care as a community. But it could become an idol if we got too like grippy with it, right? What if, as this congregation grows, or even has grown, it becomes an interlocking circle of multiple circles? What if we're still trying to make it that single circle? That would be to turn that beautiful, wonderful, iconic image into an idol, right? It's not the image that makes it an icon or an idol, it's how we relate to it. It's whether we let it continue to grow and move and transform. I mean, I can see the interlocking circles in it, right? If I use it as an icon, they're already there. The interlocking circles are already there in that image. That was made the first summer, Shirley shares. So it's been with us, with this community since the beginning. So let's move to the new UU values and just take a moment to look at those. Let's see. We won't spend too much time on this, but it's an icon, right? Right there is an icon. Each of the values going around love is an icon, but I also think it's important that love is in the center. Interestingly, I asked the question to Reverend Cheryl M. Walker, who was on the commission that brought us these values. I said, is love like a special value, or is it just one of the 7? Or is it like 6 with love? And she said it's one of the values. She was very, I don't know if you, Reverend Cheryl M. Walker has a like powerful presence, and she was like, it's one. But I'm not convinced. I actually don't think it's one. I think it's the one at the center that guides all the others. So transformation is not always good. We have to do it in the service of the love at the center, right? Generosity could become the giving tree, right? A self-sacrificing martyrdom that doesn't serve us. And then we treat the earth that way. I mean, we do treat the earth that way. Or that generosity, through a deeper look at what generosity is, and with love at the center, can become a life-giving reciprocity, mutuality. Yeah? Does anybody remember any of the words to describe any of these? Anybody have any words that jump out? Because there's 3 sentences to describe each of them. And it's kind of long if you use all 3 sentences. But anybody? Raise your hands if you do, and I'll talk until I see some hands. So equity, for example, says, we declare that every person flourish with dignity. And I'm paraphrasing. And then, because declare is not active enough, the next one talks about using our time, our resources to actually show up so that every person can flourish with dignity. I think there's a power in the fact that they're so long that I can't recite them from memory, because they're not meant to be idols. They're meant to be icons. They're meant to be windows into an energy that then we live in and explore. And they've got clues to what they are in those 3 sentences. But that's not we didn't close the wonder box and trap it, and now it's done, that's it. Right? We can use these as living icons that guide our life. Last thing, there's a built-in checks and balance or counterbalance here, right? Do you see that? That interdependence and justice might not always agree, but they counterbalance each other. I'm going to tell a story that I told at Green Springs with the current principles to show this. So I was being a little idolatrous about my daughter's bedtime one night. And we were running late. And her mother had gotten her into the habit of cleaning up before bed. But we were running late, so I was like, can we please not clean up? Can you believe I said that? And my child was like, no, I have to clean up. I want it to be clean before I go to bed. And I was like, sweetheart, please, we got to get you to bed. We're running late. And so we got into an argument, right? Partly, I just want to admit, because I was being idolatrous about my nervousness and anxiety about bedtime, okay? So at a certain point in the argument, my child, who was about 5 or 6, maybe 7, said, Dad, I feel like you're not following our principles. And then she quoted the children's version of the 5th principle about the use of the democratic process. She said, every person gets a vote. I feel like you're not giving me my vote. I want to clean up. And I was horrified and ecstatic at the same time. As you can imagine, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. I'm a UU minister. My child knows the principles and can use them in an argument, but she's using them against me. So I thought, well, that is true, but all the principles interrelate, I said. And you know the one that says that we have to care for Earth's lifeboat? Well, we're a part of that lifeboat. I was stretching, y'all. And our bodies are a part of that lifeboat, and we have to care for our bodies, which means we need to get a good night's sleep. And in this case, that beats the vote that you have to clean up. The respect for the interdependent web and the care for the lifeboat beats that, okay? So the point of the story, we made a compromise. She cleaned up a little bit, but not completely. Obviously, the argument took longer than if she cleaned up in the first place. It was, in a way, a parenting fail, but maybe it wasn't, because we had that wonderful, rich dialogue. I would say we were practicing pluralism, right? In that dialogue. Think about that. What does it mean to practice pluralism as a parent? But also to balance that with equity and justice, with love at the center. What does that look like in each moment? So we can use this icon as a guide. I'm encouraging you actually to think about walking around in your life with this image and these energies and asking yourself, what is the tool that this moment calls for, guided by love? Is it the dismantling of an oppressive structure? Or is the moment calling for gratitude and generosity and mutuality? Or is the moment calling for new learning and transformation and new ways of looking at things? Or some mixture of both? Or, how quick is it changing from moment to moment which icon we're calling forth of our values? So to close, I just want to say that I really wanted to make icon a verb, but the best I could do was make it an adjective, right? So the sermon is called Iconic. And the idea is to play on words, right? I'm not really talking about like an iconic song, but I'm talking about this approach to life that can be iconic, that can be a way of using all the different energies. And to close, I think there's also something beautiful about an image. And these are not perfect images. I didn't share them because I think they're like awesome art. Actually, I think there's something useful about the fact that it doesn't have to be a saint. Like probably the icons we're using in our lives are not perfectly formed. And right, so we should be also questioning whether the icon is the right icon for the moment. How far have we come in shaping that icon? So that when we're living iconically, we're asking ourselves, what energy, and this is why I say an image might be even better than a word, right? Is what's the energy, right? What's the energy of this? Not the words that I put to it that made it something bad. And when we do that, I think we start to see new possibilities. So I thought I was done, but I've got this one more connection. So if I reordered these and connected these to our mission statement, this for me would be the caring community, right? That errant of generosity and reciprocity. And this would be the growth, right? Do you remember me dancing this one with the sinuous and the image of like the long time of forming a valley, right? So this is that transformative energy of growing in spirit. And this one is acting for justice, right? With the like thick thighs and the power. Except here's the thing. If you've done work for justice, you know that sometimes this is not the energy that's going to get you justice. You need this sly, sinuous, slow, water-like energy to get to justice. If you've cared in community, you know sometimes the caring thing to do means you have to stand up with some force and tell that kid to go to bed. Maybe not the best example, right? But you need to use some authority in order to care and set some boundaries and have those thick thighs of resistance to care. So that's why I think the images are even more powerful than words as icons. But on the other hand, the words keep it human, right? The energies can be kind of like the river just flows or floods, right? It just does what it does. But we channel our energies with love at the center guiding us. So may that be a tool for us in our spiritual lives, in our iconic living. May we channel our energies for love as we dance together. Let it be a dance we do together.
As we extinguish our chalice, I invite you to join me now in our community blessing with these words of David Bumbaugh. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity.